Hello, beautiful soul. In this video, I want to talk about how I was a narcissist magnet for so many years, unintentionally, until I actually realized I was stuck in this pattern and was able to do something about it. So, like a lot of people in this situation, I grew up in a family dynamic where one of my parents did have a lot of narcissistic traits, a lot of narcissistic behavior. There was a lot of criticism and gaslighting and that victim mentality where there's just no accountability at all and no responsibility for their actions. And it was super, super toxic. And as a result, I grew up and thought this dynamic was normal. I had all the behaviors that comes with growing up in a dynamic like that. I was very empathetic. I had a lack of boundaries. I was a people pleaser. I abandoned myself. Like all of these things that I had to do as a coping mechanism for safety. And then I went out into the world without knowing that this was my subconscious patterns. And so I attracted narcissists in every single facet of my life. I got involved with them romantically. They were my friends. They were in my workplaces. They were my boss. Like this dynamic was everywhere and I just couldn't escape it and I couldn't understand why. I thought, I'm showing up in this unconditionally loving way. I'm so caring. I'm so empathetic. I'm so supportive. Not realizing that people with narcissistic traits don't actually care. They see empathetic people. They see supportive people. They see givers as someone they can use. They're not thinking, this is so nice, I feel so loved and supported, this is going to help me grow and become a better person. And the trap that I fell in was having a savior complex, thinking I could love and care and support people and that they would grow, and they never did. And this was a harsh realization to have. Like being in these dynamics was just depleting me, keeping me stuck, whittling my self-esteem away to nothing. So that then I didn't have enough self-worth and self-esteem and self-confidence to actually improve my situation. And so I was getting stuck in these dynamics and not wanting to move or not being able to move because my self-esteem was so low. And it wasn't until I completely burnt out because of a toxic workplace, because of a line manager that had a lot of narcissistic traits, that I finally realized that I was in this dynamic my whole life. And so my first experience as an adult with someone who had narcissistic traits was in a romantic relationship. I spent 7 years with someone. They were extremely toxic. I was criticized. I was gaslit. Everything was my fault. There was no accountability. We didn't work as a team. My self-esteem just got lower and lower and lower in that relationship, until I got to a point where I just couldn't stand it anymore. And even though my self-esteem was so low, I still thought being alone for the rest of my life, I was only like 24. It was ridiculous. But that was how low my self-esteem was. I thought, no one's ever going to love me. I'm so unlovable. I'm never going to find anyone else. And this person actually played on that. So the day that I left, he was like, you're never going to find someone better than me. And despite that, I left anyway because I was just done with the criticism, with the no accountability, with the not working as a team, with not showing me the care and the love and the support that I deserved, with the one-sided dynamic. And so I did leave, and I wrote a list the day I left of all the ways that he let me down, of all the ways that the relationship and the dynamic was toxic and one-sided and not reciprocal. And that list kept me on track. I'm so glad I wrote that. And the thing is about these people is that what they're saying couldn't be further from the truth. So in our relationship, he was the one that actually raised the narcissism thing. He said that I was narcissistic. And so I had this belief that there was something wrong with me. I was a narcissist. And then I went to therapy and asked my friends who were psychologists, and I was like, am I this? Like I did the research and looked into how I might be a narcissist and how I might be the toxic one. And it wasn't me, it was actually him. He was like the one that had narcissistic traits. And this was even confirmed a couple of years after I left. So his ex after me contacted me in a broken place at rock bottom. Her self-esteem was terrible, reaching out to me for some sort of emotional support and validation that it wasn't her. And she explained to me the same patterns of behavior, that she was criticized for everything, blamed for everything. After 12 months, she finally left in this broken place at rock bottom with no self-esteem. And of course, I reassured her and let her know it wasn't her, it was him. I experienced the same thing. I encouraged her to pour into herself, into self-care. And so that just confirmed for me that maybe when we got together and I was a teenager, I may have been emotionally immature. I may have had some toxic traits and behaviors. And as I had grown as a person, he hadn't grown. He was still stuck and not willing to take accountability. And then I moved on from that and my relationships did improve because I saw the red flags. However, my workplaces, my friendships had these behaviors and traits in them as well, where if I expressed a need or expressed authentically a truth that I had, there would be a retaliation. There would be gaslighting. The other person would deem themselves to be the victim in the situation and not take accountability. And so because I am a highly empathetic person and I hadn't developed the skills or understanding of good boundaries, and I did avoid conflict because I'd been in this dynamic for my whole life, there was a walking on eggshells. There wasn't a conflict avoidance. I was taking responsibility for other people's feelings and emotions. All of these things were keeping me stuck in these dynamics. And the fact that I am a very positive and idealistic person that wants to believe the best in people, that wants to believe that if there's just more love in the world, that's just going to help everything and help everyone. The naivety of it kept me stuck as well. So there is no amount of love that we can pour into someone who isn't willing to look at themselves and take accountability and grow. Like, we cannot do the work for someone else. Everyone's responsible for themselves and doing their own work. And that was a big realization I had to have. Like, me being a part of someone's life, enabling their narcissistic traits, feeding their narcissistic requirements of validation was not helping. It was just enabling. So I had to get really real with myself and take the steps. And the first one was do an energetic audit. Like, how did I actually feel around certain people? How did they make me feel? Were they uplifting, encouraging, supportive? Did they genuinely see me? Because a lot of times they weren't able to. Like, we can only meet someone at the depth and the level we've met ourselves. And people who don't take accountability and responsibility for themselves, for their own actions, their own beliefs, their own thoughts, like all of those things, are only going to see people at that level. They're not going to be able to truly see the depth of someone. And people who don't take accountability don't care about anyone else's needs. They're takers, they're energetic vampires. They're looking at what they can get. They're not looking at how is this reciprocal, how is this give and take. They're not pouring into each other's cups. They're literally just siphoning off other people. They're building themselves up through taking. They're not generating their self-worth, their self-confidence, their personal growth. Like, they're not generating anything themselves. They're just taking from others. And so when we're around these people, it's really obvious because we're walking on eggshells. We're scared to express our truth because we don't know how they're going to retaliate or what they're going to do or say. We're drained, we're exhausted. We don't have a lot of energy left for ourselves. This was like the first step of realizing and getting the truth of these dynamics. And when it's like someone really close to you, like for me, it was like my best friend, my line manager at work, like really big things, it can be really hard to come to these realizations. And so observing these behaviors is really important, observing how people treat us. And then having the courage and self-worth, because we believe that we deserve better. We believe we deserve equal give and take relationships, to put boundaries in place, to limit contact, to cut them out of our life if we can. This is really important, to not enable poor behavior, to not validate poor behavior anymore. And spending time pouring back into ourselves, regulating our nervous system, treating our energy and our time, our personal resources as sacred, and protecting them with our boundaries is really important. It's having that realization that our peace is more important than the potential of something, the potential of that person to grow, the potential of where that relationship could go. This was like a huge one for me. I no longer choose people that do not choose me. I no longer invest in potential. I look at what the reality is. What are people showing me? What am I observing about that person's behavior? Are they showing up? Are they invested in growing something with me? Is it equal give and take? And if it's not, having the courage to step away, protect my peace, invest in reciprocal dynamics that are more equal in give and take, where I do feel seen and heard and validated and supported. And I think this is the hardest step to do, because when we've been in these dynamics for so long, our self-esteem is like nothing. It's so low. We believe we're worthless. We believe we're not worthy of anything better, and we're not going to find anything better, and no one's going to love us and validate us and see us like truly and care about us. But it's about finding the courage to do it anyway, pouring back into ourselves, doing the work on ourselves, healing those wounds, understanding that the patterns came from childhood most likely, and were just something that we carried through, and that there is things that we can do about it. We can love ourselves, we can grow our confidence and not settle anymore, and only accept things that we are deserving of in our life. So we're rebuilding ourselves. And so having these realizations, understanding all of this, has literally helped me transform my life, where I'm only entertaining reciprocal equal give and take. I'm not investing in the potential of something or someone's empty promises or empty words anymore. I'm seeing how people show up, looking at the character of a person, like how people show up, what their values are, what they care about, making sure those things are in alignment with me as well, and making an assessment or a judgment on how I feel and how I'm being treated as to what happens with that dynamic moving forward. Not hoping someone will choose me or accept me or love me or care for me or validate me or pour back into me how much I'm pouring back into them. It's like not hoping, it's coming to terms with the reality and only accepting dynamics that actually do that from the get-go, where we're not having to prove our worth to someone or hope and pray that they're going to eventually see our value one day. And there are billions of people on planet Earth. Like, there are people for everyone. It's when we let go of the things that are taking up space, that aren't for us, that don't value us, we create space for things and people that do. We make space for our actual tribe that is going to understand us, where we are going to feel valued. So I really hope that this has helped someone. I love you. Bye.